Okay, today is May the 6th in your reading, and I don't have my tripod with me right now, so I'm going to do it this way, and even the phone is in a different way. But we're in Ruth chapter 2. We're going to finish the whole book of Ruth today, and there are some particulars as you read through this that we won't go into. Again, if anybody is interested in a little bit more commentary, that's fine. I can send it to you, or you can ask me for it, or whatever. But beyond just for the sake of reading and responding for the day, there's a few things that I would encourage you to take note of. And I also would hope that if you don't have a heritage bookmark with an outline of questions that you can use to respond to every text that you read, I encourage you to get that. It really is the single tool for spiritual formation. Our plan for discipleship is to simply help people to get into the Word, to read it, to think about it, to ask questions of the text, and then commit to submitting to the Holy Spirit in His empowerment to respond to the Scripture and to obey and to imitate Jesus, and then to share that key of talking about it out loud, sharing it, texting it, posting it, telling somebody, sharing someone with someone, the fresh baked bread in your heart. That is so key to your own transformation and to the expansion of the kingdom. Transformation and expansion. Anyhow, here we go. So the story was really bad, right? Womp 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 womp. Everything it goes south and further south, and then there's this redemptive chain, this not chain but turn, this where Ruth commits her affection to Naomi. They go home, and that's beautiful. They go back to Bethlehem, and then she's there, and then we don't tell how long, but then Ruth says, she just pipes up and says, let me go out into the fields and try to gather, and maybe I'll find favor, and let me just find favor with someone. So she goes out hoping to find favor, knowing that it's going to require favor for her to have any success. She's a woman and she's a foreigner. Now, what she hopes to do is somehow take advantage of what is present in the Mosaic law, that they were supposed to, that the harvesters weren't supposed to grab everything, but they were supposed to leave some stuff behind as they went through. And there's even, like, you can read it in Deuteronomy, where you grab it, but don't shake everything off. Don't do that. Leave something behind for the poor and the foreigner. Now, you might say, well, that makes sense. That's probably the way that all that's very tidy, and good thing she did that. But remember, this is in the book of Judges, so it would be rare for people to actually be following said law of Moses, right? Because we've already seen that. This is during the time of the Judges. And so she goes out, and furthermore, being a young woman, poor, and a foreigner, she's gonna go to the ultimate blue collar, what's ultimate blue collar area where no one knows her and there's no unions. Are you doing the math with me? She is putting herself at great risk, not just getting catcalled on the streets of Queens. Hey there, how you doing? How about a little smile for me? No, worse away. The risk that she is putting herself at, even the risk of, yeah, you can have grain if, I don't mean to be indelicate, but the reader needs to feel the risk that Ruth is willingly embracing for the sake of her mother-in-law. This is she's going above and beyond. She is willing to embrace risk. She's willing to embrace risk, great risk or harm, and so she does. And that, again, she goes above the law. It's a story of someone doing what is absolutely, it's not necessary, it's not required for her to do this. This is not an obligation. But while everybody else can't decide whether they want to serve, Moloch or Yahweh or Baal or Ashtoreth or Yahweh or whatever, here you have a Moabite woman who is fulfilling the law by walking in love and walking in loving kindness. Chesed is the word, kindness. So she is showing great kindness to her mother-in-law. The word, your New Living or others might use the word kindness, but it's the word chesed. It's a good word. Look for that word in the text. So she does that, and then she gets to, fast forward, she gets to the field of Boaz, and then there's a rapid increase. She works all day. Boaz comes, and he says, hey, who's that? And they say, she's been working all day really hard. She's only taking a few breaks in the shelter. And he says, hey, and he calls her forward and tells her to come close, and she eats I think the Hebrew indicates that that she eats and actually sits close to him. There's a there's a Hebrew intensive that means from or close to, and I think that she dips her bread in the oil with him. It's in my version of the story. He brings her real close. Anyway, so he sends her back out and he warns everybody and he tells her, "Stay with my crew. You'll be harassed elsewhere." By harassed, that means bad. So he brings her close. He gives her favor. She harvests this, at the end of that day. She brings home enough leftover abundant food harvest that would feed she and her mother-in-law for a week and a half. She does that in a day, and then plus her leftover lunch she feeds her mother-in-law. So then her mother-in-law says, "Wow, this is the guy. Stay with him." So she works there for through that harvest and into the next harvest. She just keeps doing it, and so that time goes by, and finally Naomi says, "Okay, this is the deal. It's time to get you hooked up." So she gives Ruth these instructions, and it's important just for the reader to understand. She dress like a bride, to go quietly, to take a big risk and go into the threshing floor at night after everyone is asleep. She uncovers his feet and lays down next to him. He wakes up, he sees her. She says, "Cover me, like let your wings cover me." Just like what Boaz had said to her earlier about the wings of Yahweh. This is not an illicit encounter. It could appear that way, which is why they keep it quiet, but this is not an illicit encounter. I remember some of my friends in seminary saying, "Oh yeah, I know," because they use the word shakav. She lied down, shakav. And usually the word shakav in Hebrew means shakav. It means intimacy. But in this case, the text is clear that both of these, that would have been unlawful at the time, that would have been unvirtuous, but both of them, the text is intending to celebrate their virtue, and even in that encounter, Boaz says, "You are a virtuous woman." So it's simply a proposal. She kind of initiates a proposal, and Boaz is probably older enough to be, he is probably somewhere around, could be Naomi's age. So he's older, but that's not weird in that age, and she's old enough to make it's not weird. And so it's wonderful, and so you see the process to where he redeems her. So he goes beyond, she goes beyond, and he goes beyond back. They both have gone back and forth. But what you need to hear is when Ruth testifies to her about what Boaz has done. In Ruth chapter 2, verse 20, Naomi says, "Blessed be the Lord, for he," and the text probably means Yahweh, but she could be including Yahweh and or Boaz. But he has not failed to show his kindness to the living and the dead. And there is, I think, one of the worship key themes of worship, of praise in the text, and that's the word again, chesed. This is a story about the chesed of God at work among people who are walking in that same love, and it's a story that celebrates the triumph of loving kindness. It's not that loving kindness is better than the law; it's that loving kindness fulfills the law. It's so simple. It's really like, look, I mean, it's not the message of the text, but it's a significance of the text to say, look, the law, it's not that hard. It's not hard. The law is not a burden. It's a matter of the heart. It's a matter of the heart. Remember, we said that the law is not hard in and of itself, but the human heart resists obedience, resists the nature, the character of God, the sinfulness in our hearts. Even when Paul would say later that the law, exposes sin or makes us even want to sin, it's not that the law does that. It's that there's an inherent sinful inclination to rebel and to disobey against that which is right, and to just cling toward evil, and that can only be cleansed in our hearts. But here Naomi and Ruth show us how loving kindness, they just live by love, and they fulfill the law in everything that they do, and then some. More, there's always an abundance. I mean, she does more. She's kinder to Naomi than she needs to be. She's more honorable to Boaz. Boaz is more kind to her than he needs to be. All this stuff, and then finally, at the end of the story, the audience is listening to this wonderful story, and we're like, "Oh, this is so great! This is such a neat story." And then, kaboom! We find out that this Moabite woman is in the line of King David himself. That she is the great grandmother of David. She gives birth to Obed. Obed is the father of Jesse, and Jesse is the father of David. Kaboom! Look, he is that King David. So clearly, the story of Ruth here is finishing in Solomonic times, is intended to tell the reader, just remember, you guys remember how cool David was? Well, here's his story. But it's an inspiring story for the reader to embrace a lifestyle of chesed. Fantastic. Jump to John chapter 4 today. And this is the story of the official's son. He works for Herod. He has a son who's ill. He literally walks 20 miles to find Jesus. Says, Lord, my son's dying. Jesus said, your son lives. Now he says, you will not believe unless you see miracles. A lot of people say Jesus is scolding everybody for wanting miracles. I don't think so. I think he is just, John never presents the miraculous in a negative way. John, throughout the whole text, Jesus actually points to his miracles as to reasons and to believe in him. And I don't think that this statement should be read in the negative. It may be like, you will not believe unless you have miracles, unless you have signs. And the truth is, these things are written that you might believe that Jesus is the Christ. We're supposed to see these signs and believe. So I just think it's a statement of what is. It's not even what should be per se. I don't know that we could say, we might. I think it's probably, yeah. Let's just say, let's instead of saying, oh, Jesus is dismissing the miraculous, I think he's endorsing it. Why don't we just say it this way? It's true. People, unless they see something from heaven, their hearts may not be opened to faith. All right, anyway, so he says, your son lives. Go, your son lives. And then the man has to turn around and walk for 20 miles back. And imagine what's in his heart, what's in his mind the whole time. And then on the way back, he looks up and he sees servants coming toward him. And perhaps his heart sinks, and all he can think of is, here comes the bad news, they've told me. But then their eyes meet, and the servants perhaps run more quickly. And now they're waving their arms at him. You won't believe this. And your son lives, and perhaps they begin to yell, your son lives. And imagine the joy of the father of the news. And they say, well, when did this happen? It turns out it was the exact moment that Jesus said. And it's implicit in the text. It's not overt, but it's not explicit. But the idea is, again, that Jesus is the greatest. He's able to say a command, and 20 miles later, 20 miles away, boom, it happens in that moment, which is miraculous, but just shows his authority. But also it tells us that we should trust Jesus, and that there's every time any miracle in the book of John requires that somebody obeys Jesus. Somebody has to obey. Somebody has to obey Jesus. And in obedience, we see that as we obey his word, that his word produces the result. His word, it will not return void. As we obey his word will produce and accomplish what it was sent to do. Pretty cool stuff. All right, I think that's all we'll do today, because we're already 13 minutes into this. Yep. Okay, let's just read Proverbs 14:26 today. Those who fear the Lord are secure. He will be a refuge for their children. Fear of the Lord is a life-giving fountain. It offers escape from the snares of death. Hey, walk in the fear of the Lord today. It's a good thing for you, for your kids, for your generations after you. God bless you. Have a fantastic May the 6th.